One of the functions of the urinary system is to maintain water balance. Plasma volume is directly related to water balance. Since most of your plasma is water, you can increase or decrease your plasma volume by increasing or decreasing the amount of water that you retain in your body. Concentrating your urine allows you to retain more water, thus increase your plasma volume. Throughout the day, urine output will be dependent upon plasma volume. Remember, you are trying to maintain homeostasis with plasma volume because this determines blood pressure. So how much urine does an adult produce daily? On average, an adult will produce between 1 to 2 liters of urine daily. Larger amounts of urine production is called polyuria. So if it is higher than 2 liters, an individual has polyuria. When do you concentrate your urine? You concentrate your urine when you are dehydrated or when plasma volumes begin to drop below normal. What types of nephrons carry out this function of concentrating the urine? Recall, it is the juxtamedullary nephrons that are involved in concentrating the urine. We're going to see how that occurs. An individual, an adult, must produce about 500 mL of urine per day in order for the kidneys to do their function of removing waste products. A medullary osmotic gradient in the interstitial fluid is used to concentrate the urine. The medullary osmotic gradient is formed by the countercurrent multiplier and maintained by the countercurrent exchange. Let's start with the countercurrent multiplier. This involves the loop of Henle of the juxtamedullary nephrons. The descending limb of the loop of Henle is permeable to water, but not to solids. And the ascending limb of the loop of Henle is permeable to solids, but not to water. The differences in these permeabilities helps to establish an osmotic gradient within the interstitial fluid of the medulla. This osmotic gradient will be used to pull water out of the urine as it goes down through the collecting ducts. The counter exchange mechanism helps maintain this osmotic gradient. This involves the vasa recta capillaries which surrounds the loop of Henle of the juxtamedullary nephrons. The kidneys maintain plasma volume by either diluting or concentrating your urine. The collecting ducts within the kidneys are where the concentration or the dilution of the urine occurs. Remember that the collecting ducts go through an interstitial fluid containing an osmotic gradient. This osmotic gradient is created by the juxtamedullary nephrons during the countercurrent multiplier mechanism. In this illustration, you'll notice the osmotic gradient. Within the cortex, the interstitial fluid has an osmolarity of 300 milliosmoles. This is isoosmotic to body fluids. As you go down through the medulla, the osmolarity of the interstitial fluid increases until you reach a maximum of about 1200 milliosmoles. We're going to be using this gradient to concentrate the urine. The collecting duct contains principal cells with receptors for the hormone ADH. In response to ADH, principal cells express aquaporins on their luminal surfaces. Aquaporins allow water to leave the collecting duct and move into the interstitial fluid by osmosis and then be reabsorbed by the blood vessels to become part of the plasma. Water moves by osmosis until equilibrium is reached. Let's look at the condition overhydration. There's also another condition called diabetes insipidus that we talked about earlier this semester. During either one of these conditions, the osmolarity of the blood or the plasma will decrease due to an increased amount of water in the blood. As the osmolarity decreases, this inhibits the release of ADH from the posterior pituitary. Due to a decrease in ADH, the amount of aquaporins will be decreased as well. In the absence or decrease of aquaporins, water reabsorption will not occur or will decrease. Thus, water will remain in the collecting duct as part of the urine. This will dilute the urine and increase urine output. During dehydration, the opposite is true. Less water is in the plasma, and therefore the osmolarity of the plasma will increase. In response to an increase in osmolarity, the posterior pituitary releases ADH. The amount of ADH released is directly related to the increase in osmolarity. As the osmolarity increases, more ADH is released. ADH, remember, stimulates the principal cells in the collecting ducts to express aquaporins. The greater the amount of ADH released, the greater the number of aquaporins expressed. Water then will leave through the aquaporins by osmosis, therefore water reabsorption in the collecting duct increases. As water leaves the collecting duct, the urine becomes more concentrated and urine output decreases. As long as the collecting duct is permeable to water, meaning as long as aquaporins are present, as the urine continues to go down through the collecting duct, more and more water will leave the collecting duct, concentrating the urine. Now let's look at the influence of alcohol on this process. Alcohol inhibits the release of ADH. In the absence of ADH, aquaporins are not expressed, and therefore water reabsorption goes down in the collecting ducts. The water will remain in the urine and urine output will increase. Individuals that drink a large amount of alcohol will have an increase in urine output, a decrease in plasma volume, and this decrease in plasma volume will lead to a decrease in blood pressure, which can then in turn lead to fainting. It is important to replenish the water that is being urinated by drinking water while consuming alcohol to prevent a drop in plasma volume. In the previous slide, I failed to point out that the filtrate within the distal convoluted tubule of the nephron is hypoosmotic at about 100 milliosmos. This is due to the permeability of the loop of Henle. Remember that the descending limb of the loop of Henle is permeable to water but not solids, and the ascending limb is permeable to solids but not water. This will help decrease the osmolarity of the filtrate as it moves into the distal convoluted tubule. Once the filtrate moves from the distal convoluted tubule into the collecting duct, it is then called urine. This hypoosmotic urine then can be concentrated as the urine goes down through the collecting duct.